One of the biggest things I hear people say that they struggle with when it comes to branding is trying to put everything into one brand, trying to say everything about who they are and what their brand does and all the different facets of things that they like to do and create and put out into the world. I've heard a lot of people say that they feel like it's just such a struggle to put that all into one brand, to try and say everything about what they do with one brand style. And so what ends up happening is they create a style that they're really into one day, but then just a few weeks or months later, they're finding it's not working and they're constantly frustrated with their branding because they feel like it's never quite the one. It never really fully encapsulates what they want it to. If this sounds like you, you're probably a multi-passionate creative. You're into a lot of different things. You love exploring different things. Your niche often shifts and you make tweaks to your business all the time. And so you often feel frustrated with your branding because you feel like you've got to create this box of a particular style and you just want to break free of that. You're constantly wanting to do different things. But how do you actually sum that up in a brand so that you can start to build a strong brand identity? So while it's great to be multi-passionate and creative and into lots of different things, this can present a problem when it comes to branding. How do you create a style that you're going to stick with, something that you feel is the right fit for your brand and is sending the right message? You don't want to feel confined by one style when you want to express so many things about who you are and what you can do. You're a dynamic and interesting creative person. But how do you put that all into a brand? I remember feeling like this when I first started out my business. I actually first started out as an Etsy seller selling handmade bags and later learnt graphic design and went on to do some freelance graphic design work. And so in the beginning, I was doing a lot of different things and it felt really hard to put that into one brand identity. And I was constantly changing things all the time. And even as I got to know the branding process and how to create brands for other people, to me, creating a brand for someone else felt easier because I could see who they were and everything about them and put that into an identity. But when it came to myself, it felt really challenging, like it was almost impossible to design for myself because I had so many different things going on and I was constantly pivoting and changing and doing different things. It wasn't until I really sat down and got clear on my brand foundations and really took my own brand quite seriously and didn't just try to create a style that looked nice or that I felt really encapsulated everything I am and everything I do, but rather started to spend time thinking more about the brand strategy and the foundations behind the brand. So in this video, we're going to look at this common struggle and let go of the idea that your brand identity needs to say everything. We're going to look at how to create a dynamic brand identity that gives you creative freedom. So first of all, you want to be looking at what the core message of your brand is. So instead of straight away thinking, oh, what do I want my brand to look like and what kind of style is going to say everything about who I am and what I do, instead we need to think about the things that never change. So the things that are core across everything that you do and everything about who you are. So this is really looking at things that are going to be more stable in your brand. So things like your brand values, maybe it's your mission, maybe it's the core message you're trying to spread, maybe it's the kind of people that you help. It could also be things like what you stand for. Maybe you do have a niche, maybe you don't. It's really important to get clear on those core messages that go throughout your work and what you do. Consider what things are consistent across everything you do. So these are probably things like your brand values, the feeling that you want to create, the message you want to share, your mission, and your personality. So what are things that just aren't changing? Your personality is always going to be the same no matter what you do. Your brand values are probably going to be the same because you've always got these values that you carry through everything you do. So when you get really clear on those things, you can make your branding about those things rather than focusing on an aesthetic style. So you're going to be building your identity around these things that are a bit more broad and go across everything in your brand. This also means that if you pivot over time and things change, you'll be able to keep some of those core brand elements and maybe only need to make little tweaks and changes rather than having to do a huge overhaul of your branding. So maybe your logo still works, maybe the fonts you choose still work, but maybe you just wanted to change a few little brand graphic elements and things like that. So you won't have to do these massive overhauls if things change and pivot because there's still core things about your brand that you've communicated that have stayed the same. Now the next thing we want to look at is the fact that your brand doesn't have to say everything. This is a common misconception. People feel like they've got to really communicate absolutely everything about their brand in their core branding. They're trying to say so much in a logo. They're trying to pick these perfect color palette that says so much about who they are and the feelings they're trying to create. And they're trying to pick these perfect fonts and graphic elements and they're just trying to make the message so clear through everything that they've created. Whereas those core brand elements actually don't need to say absolutely everything, but they do need to say something. So the most important things are making sure you're setting the tone and feeling, positioning your brand, and showcasing your brand's values and what's important to your brand. It's going to give people a glimpse of what your brand's about. So think about it a bit like when you look at a book. When you look at the cover the cover doesn't tell you the whole story. People are going to go to dive in and read it and get to know it. And it's similar with your branding. Your branding is a bit like that book cover. You want to draw someone in. It gives them something to look at and think straight away, maybe this is for me. That interests me. I like that. And then they want to dive into your brand, get to know you better, and they'll dive into other aspects of your brand. And so you really don't need to tell that whole story through your brand identity, but rather make sure that it really clicks with your audience. So consider who it is that you really want to attract. What's going to click with them and what's going to say enough about you that's going to draw them in. So for example, if someone's looking for a real luxury high-end brand, you want your brand identity to look luxury and high-end. Now it doesn't need to say everything else about what you do, but if it sets that tone, someone's going to be attracted to it that's looking for that, and they're going to want to get to know more. Whereas if someone is looking for something that's a bit more approachable, playful and fun and full of joy, if you make your branding feel like that, then they're going to be attracted to it. They're going to dive into your brand, look at your content, look at everything else you put out there, and they're going to get a greater feel for your story and who you are and what you offer. But that initial core branding just needs to draw them in. So getting this right is far more important than trying to encapsulate everything about who you are and what you do into one brand identity. It's more about thinking what's going to get someone curious enough and thinking, I think this could be for me, that they're going to then explore and get to know you better. Think of it as a hint rather than the full story. We're just trying to draw people in. This also makes sure that we're not confusing people and overwhelming them. If you're trying to say so much all at once, you may end up overwhelming people, which leads then into the more complex the brand, the more simpler the branding. So if you've got a lot going on, or your work you want to really bring to the forefront, and maybe you're doing art and you really want your art to really stand out and you don't want your branding to compete with it, maybe you've got a variety of different niches all under the same brand umbrella, then you want to make sure that your branding is more simple. So the more complex your business, the more simple the branding. So if a big part of your business is your personality and the way you create videos and content, or the way you write, or your actual work, let that come to the forefront and let your branding be more pared back. Let it say less. There is so much more to your brand than what your logo looks like, what colors you choose and what fonts you pick and what extra little elements you use and things like that. So the music you choose, your personality through how you present content on video, how you write, your voice, things like that. The customer experience you give people, how you package things. There's so many different facets to branding beyond just those core elements. And so sometimes you may just want to keep those core brand elements simple, but show more of your brand, more of your story and who you are through those other areas. And that's the things that people are going to remember, those really interesting things. They may not even know what your logo looks like because they're more interested and connected to those other aspects of your brand. So keep in mind that your brand is so much more than just those simple core elements. There are so many different aspects of your brand that help bring people into your world and help them get to know you. So again, think of it like a book cover, those core brand elements, and then they can dive into your world and get to know you in so many other ways. So let me know in the comments if you've struggled with this and if this has helped you approach your branding in a different, better way. And if you'd like to learn more about branding, graphic design, using Canva to create graphics and creativity, then be sure to subscribe to this channel and I'll see you next time.